If you aren't going to invest in you, then who is going to do it for you? It's not too late. You're not too old. We don't do old speak here, right? I'm too old for that. I'm too old to wear that. I'm too old to do this, right? Like there's a little girl inside of you who is still there and she's crying for you to pay attention to her sometimes, right? Happy Mother's Day, you beautiful, radiant bitch. Welcome to the show. If you're new here, hi, I'm Diane Flores. This is Boss Bitch Radio. And today I decided to drop a special episode. I've been doing one per week, but I've been really diving into my own sort of journaling, self-care more so than ever now. It's like on hyperdrive. So this podcast is a result of it, but it spawned from a couple weeks ago when I thought, I really would love to do a dedicated Mother's Day episode. I don't believe I've done that in 4 years. And I asked a question over on Instagram, which we're going to share here in a little bit, about what we would tell other moms out there, really like just some wisdom from experience. And so today is really just a love letter to my mamas out there. I'm going to try not to get emotional, but let me just tell you guys, I've been working through some hormonal therapy right now, and the progesterone, she fucking causes some tears. Okay. So just bear with me. But I really want you to think deeply throughout this episode. And I'm going to ask you some questions, give you some things to think about. I'm going to talk about some myths we've been sold over the years, and I can speak from experience, and really just some community wisdom from my Instagram mamas. And I know a lot of you listen here. So if you hear your name, come over onto Instagram and let me know that you listen to this episode. But really, I hope you are taking this day to be with yourself and enjoy whatever it is that you fucking want to, bitch, because it's Mother's Day and you're a motherfucking mother. Now, let's take a deep breath collectively together. I need to do that. I've had a lot of coffee this morning. I'm caffeinated and medicated. So take a deep breath, not a half-ass one. That's my dishwasher. Use your full ass. Take a full ass fucking breath. I know the F word is, she's very abundant this morning, but I'm feeling rebellious. Okay. Take a deep breath. And I want you to picture yourself before you had your children. Obviously, this is an episode for the mamas out there that have kids, whether you birthed them, you raised them, I don't care. However you want to identify with being a mom. Before you were that wonderful title of being a mom, did you have any hopes and dreams that maybe you didn't get to actualize? I know that when I became a mom, I didn't even know what the hell I didn't know if I was going to graduate high school. I was 16. So my hopes and dreams were the ones from childhood because I was a child. And maybe that's you too. I know I tend to attract similar women to myself. And I have a lot of women that were teen moms, right? Shout out to the OG teen moms in the audience here. Now, fast forward, okay? Fast forward. No matter, this is more for kids that are moms that have kids that are a little bit older, right? Now, I was here and I can now look back and say, like, here are my thoughts, right? So fast forward now, you've got sports practices, rehearsals, travel ball, cheer competitions, private lessons, piano lessons, tennis, like whatever your thing is with your kids or your kids' thing, right? It's crazy to me because isn't it wild that we will spend thousands, okay? And listen, I speak from experience because Ish the Beast, from the second that child could walk, at 3 years old, was in dance, and it was dance, cheer, soccer. We tried sports. She said, no, thank you. But it eventually was cheer and gymnastics until she was 19. Okay. She had already graduated high school. She was still on a competitive cheer team, and private lessons, travel tournaments. And let me ask you this. If you're like, yep, I write those checks. Yep. Do you expect your kids to go pro? Like, really, right? Like, don't involve the dads in this conversation because they're going to be like, fuck yeah, my kid's going to be a pro basketball player, right? Like, don't be telling the dads. But as moms, at least in my experience, I never expected my kids to go pro. Like, in the back of my head, I secretly wished that my daughter would take all of her experience with dance and gymnastics and would be like a backup dancer for Britney Spears or something, right? Like, that was my secret wish, but it was like I had no expectations. I really truly believed in her growth, and I knew that this would instill confidence because these were things I didn't get to experience, and I suffered tremendously with crippling social anxiety and being an introvert, which I know is crazy. But we want them to be part of something, be a part of team sports, all of those things that we know are going to build character and it's good for them, right? And physical health and all the things. But what about you? What about your own personal growth, your own joy, your own body, your own confidence, your own health, or even your own healing, right? Which we're going to get into. We hesitate there, right? We're like, oh, little Timmy, I can't. He's got soccer camp and I just dropped, $400, right? We justify, we rationalize. The funny thing is, my daughter's almost 30, okay, which is fucking wild to even say out loud. But what I've noticed is that she has a much easier time with things that I struggled with, when I was her age, and honestly, sometimes even still now. But I think that the children of that era, right, that are in their 30s now, are living the treat yourself era, right? Like, treat yourself, boo-boo, treat yourself, love yourself, set fucking boundaries. And I applaud that. And I think that it is due to a lot of the work that us mamas have done in really wanting our daughters and our sons, but this is the girls' corner, to really live their life fully actualized, right? So let me ask you this. If you aren't going to invest in you, then who is going to do it for you? It's not too late. You're not too old. It's like, we don't do old speak here, right? I interviewed a beautiful woman for my podcast. It's probably been a couple years now. Her name's Renee. And she's just such a sparkling light. She's a bodybuilder and she's 70, probably 73 now. I think I interviewed her when she was 71. But one thing that I learned from her on the podcast is we don't do old speak. We don't say, I'm too old. I'm too old for that. I'm too old to wear that. I'm too old to do this, right? Like, there's a little girl inside of you who is still there and she's crying for you to pay attention to her sometimes, right? I just think it's kind of crazy that we don't blink at, spending $2,000 on a summer of travel ball or private lessons or, gymnastics and competitive cheer and softball, all the things, but spending a couple thousand on ourselves for something like health and fitness coaching, therapy, right? Like, let's not forget the healing that isn't done for a lot of us. We just stuff that shit down. Retreats, hormonal therapy, like things like that. It's like, oh, it's too expensive. But we're going to drop $2,000 on Tommy for his softball camp for the whole summer and private lessons and yada, yada. But we have no expectations of this kid going pro, right? He's 8. Just, throwing some shit out there. But that good old mom guilt, that's a thing. It's gross. I hate it. I'm so sorry. Why do we have that? But it tells us, oh, you're being selfish, right? Like, you're taking away from the family. And I don't know. I mean, if you haven't gathered this yet, newsflash, your kid's not going to go pro. I had 3. I used to drive a Nissan Armada. Does anybody know what that is? It's a fucking bus, okay? It seats 9 people. This was back in another time in my life when I was married and I had 3 children. I had a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a newborn. And I was carting them around doing all the things, right? Like I needed the giant fucking bus to have the bag of the football stuff for my oldest son, Alicia and her 85 different outfits for whether it was cheer or gymnastics or dance or whatever. And then the stroller and the car seat for the newborn, right? Like, oh my God, how did we even have the energy for that? Fucking cheers to us, right? Like, here's a cheers, raise your glass. I'm going to have a sip of my coffee. But here's the reality, okay? You could go pro at becoming the healthiest, happiest, hottest version of yourself. And that runs deep, right? That fucking changes the entire family. And I will sit here, I'll fight you. Like, let's fight. Like, not really. I want to give you a hug. But you taking money and investing into yourself, that is a treasure. Like I have the chills right now and I just shaved. Can we not do that? Because this is how important this is and how much I firmly believe in it, right? I've seen it for myself, right? There was a period in time where there was no way possible that a cent could have been really allocated for myself. It all went towards my children because it was poverty, right? Like I was a teen mom. And so there was no, let me treat yourself, right? That was not a thing. I mean, I was shopping at the grocery store with government aid coupons. They didn't even have fancy debit cards back in the day. And so this wasn't even a conversation I can have. And this isn't a conversation for people in that situation, right? Like you got to take care of your family. But there was a point in time where when I started my businesses, when I started my business, the second business didn't come along until 4 years ago, but basically that I realized when I hired my first coach, how much of a ripple effect that had in my entire family because I was pouring into me, which was awkward and weird. And it didn't happen until I was 28. Right? 29. After I had my youngest, I hired my first coach and paid for my first boot camp right around the time that he was born, right after that. And it was life-changing. And I think that's really what I need you to take away from this is it's not selfish. It's actually an investment in your family, right? Because the things that you do for yourself as a mother, whether that's go to therapy, whether that's you join some kind of, 12-week program or you hire a coach or whatever, how can anything negative come out of that, right? Oh, time away from my kids, I feel guilty. Trust me. Trust me when I say, when I started doing this, when I hired my first coach, Julie Laurie, I think she's in Kentucky, if I had to guess. I can't remember. It's been my oldest is 19. So it's been about 18 years ago since I hired my very first coach. When I got my plan from her, my diet plan and my workout plan, my kids started noticing, right? You think your kids don't notice, but they fucking notice. And, they might hem and haw a little bit and give you a little bit of a hard time if you go to the gym or you're spending time on yourself. But ultimately, when you come back and you can handle them and life and the household and everything much better because you've poured into yourself, my kids would start to tell me, Mom, I think you need to go to the gym. Like they became an advocate for me to go take care of myself because they knew when I came back, I was a better mom for it. Okay. So again, deeper question. Let's rein it in, Diane. Okay. When did we start believing that our kids' passions mattered more than our own? Let that sink in, right? You don't need permission. You don't need a permission slip to pour into yourself. And just to tie this up with a beautiful bow, it's not taking this, doing things for yourself, investing financially in you and taking the time to do that thing you've been wanting to do, whatever that is. It's not taking away from your family. It's pouring into them. whether you realize it or not. And a lot of times women don't, because they haven't had the experience of doing it, right? They haven't allowed themselves to invest in themselves. And so they don't see what's on the other side of it. Maybe you see your friends doing it. Maybe you see people at work doing it and you're like, oh, must be nice. It is nice, bitch. And it's time for you to also be able to experience those things. But I think sometimes we fear that if we invest in certain things that we won't follow through, and then it's going to be a waste of money and all that. Hold your feet to the fire. Hold your feet to the fire, which means when you pay attention, and it is going to require you to do the work, right? But what I urge you to think about is your children when you do this, when you do these things for yourself. If you have a hard time doing things for yourself and justifying those expenses, then don't do it for yourself. Do it for your kids. Ooh, that's the gushy sweet spot, right? It really is. So let's talk about the myths that we've been sold, okay? The myth we've been sold is that a good mom equals total sacrifice, right? Like, I'm a doormat. I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to run myself ragged. I'm going to be exhausted when my head hits the pillow and absolutely sacrifice everything for my family, for my children, right? I'm going to give you a little bit of a paradigm shift. Instead of walking through life embodying that myth that we've been sold, unfortunately, I want you to imagine a world where being a great mom means showing your kids what it looks like to live a life that's really fully aligned with what you want, right? And to be fully alive and to be present and to be there for yourself. You know, why is it okay to pour thousands of money and endless hours into our children's activities and sports, but it's selfish to take a few hours to move your body, right? Or to pursue a dream, or to feel sexy. Maybe you want to take some pole dancing classes, right? I don't know. Why is that okay? Why have we made that okay? Let's change the conversation and start moving forward in another direction, my friends. Now, I'm going to share a little bit of my personal truth with y'all, okay? We're going to get a little bit into some boss bitch history, okay? So when I was a young mom, I decided very early on, I'm going to try not to cry through this part, okay? Bear with me. I decided early on that I wanted to give my children what I did not have, okay? And that meant I love dancing. If you follow me on Instagram or you've known me for any length of time, I mean, my business started as a pole dancing. I mean, we went really crazy with the type of dance, but it started as a pole dancing business. But I didn't get to do those things, right? Like, my sister and I vividly remember, you know, my parents were broke. We weren't poor, but we were broke. And I begged my mom to put me in dance. And there was this little dance studio, if you're from the Turlock area, and I believe it was June McVeigh, and it was on the corner of Golden State, and I don't even know. It was like a house, okay? I don't know the status of this woman, but she was an older lady at the time. And my mom put us into dance. I remember walking through the door and her talking to the lady, and she had to buy us tap shoes. And I remember my mom was like freaking out because like they didn't have the money for that. And she somehow pulled it together. We did tap for 1 month. And my mom was like, we can't afford to do it anymore. And then what else? I did cheer for a sneeze in time during junior high. And the only reason why, actually seventh and eighth grade. The only reason why I was able to do cheerleading is because my dad hustled candy bars like a motherfucker. Okay. He had a job where there were, you know, he was like a foreman or a leadman or something at like a sheet metal company. And he would take these boxes of candy bars. Right. And so that was the only way I was able to participate in cheerleading. But there was a lot of like extra things during cheer that I couldn't do because we couldn't afford it. Like they had certain camps and this and that. And like it was always a difficult thing. So long story longer, I was hell bent on almost forcing my children to do sports and activities because I didn't get the opportunity. And I knew how difficult it was for me in middle school to even start cheerleading because we had moved around a lot. You know, I had a little sister that had passed by that time, and it was very challenging for me as a introvert and socially awkward child to do anything new. Like I would have loved to do theater, but I would not give myself that opportunity. I was way too scared and to be embarrassed. So all this to say, all of my extra income was allocated to Steven and Alicia, which are my two oldest children. And this is when I was single mom days before my youngest came along. And so I didn't do a lot of things for myself then. Right. I poured everything into that. I worked 2 jobs. I worked in a doctor's office 40 hours a week in our town. And then I also worked at the Gold's Gym on the weekends and sometimes after work. And a lot of that was because I wanted my kids to have all the things I couldn't experience. I knew that it was super important for them in their growth, just as children, for confidence and like doing things that push them outside of their comfort zone, right? Because I knew how much the cheerleading period of time had changed my life, really. Like it made me a little bit less, right? I had some friends and it was fun and all that, right? And then I had my youngest, and I then started to feel really lost in being a mom and nothing for myself because I had a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, a newborn, a husband, and I dabbled in the gym, but I didn't really do much extra for myself. I was going to the gym and working out and all that fun stuff and taking group classes and body pump and all that jazzercise, step aerobics. I'm aging myself here. And I hired my first coach, and it was 2007, 2008. Okay. It was shortly after my youngest was born. And we did not have the money really for that, right? Like I actually hadn't started my business at this point. I was working from home. I was doing medical transcription at this point, but I had no right, if you were to look at my finances at that time, to fork out money for my first coach, right? I had no business doing that, right? My husband worked. I was working from home, but there wasn't a ton extra, as you can imagine. And so I was doing little things for myself then, which was like, coloring my hair, getting my nails done, getting my toes done. I'm sorry, but those are like base level things that should not feel like, girl, treat yourself. Like that is just grooming. Okay. Let's be real. And I literally had to stop doing those things. Right? I was in charge of the finances in my marriage, and I decided that I wanted to do coaching. I was doing, some research and stuff online, and I, reached out to the coach and had a call with her and found out her pricing and everything. And then I went to work. I went to work in terms of looking at my budget and my bank statement. And I was like, okay, well, we're going to take off the hair in terms of getting that done. I'm not going to do my nails anymore. I'm not going to do my toes anymore. Any random like Target purchases and things like that, cut way back. And I invested in coaching, and it was a game changer. It was a game changer, not just for my body, but for my life, right? I had somebody in my corner that was helping me discover my strength in terms of just my body, and also my resilience and my ability to change my family's health too, quite honestly. And that's where I really saw the power in accountability. And, there are tons of statistics out there on accountability versus going at it alone. I think I just heard one the other day because I was watching a YouTube video, and one of my favorite YouTubers, his name is Will Tennyson, just an awesome kid, right? He's 30 years old and he just does a lot of awesome stuff in the fitness community to just kind of shine a light on stuff that's, that's myths and like stuff that's real. And he was talking about how those that have a coach or hire somebody for accountability or have a therapist, like all the things, right, have a 97% chance of success versus somebody who decides they want to go at this shit alone is 3% successful. Now, I don't know how true that is. That deserves a Google, but I've looked at this stuff over the years, in preparing for podcasts and things, and there is validity to that. So I want this podcast to just kind of be a gentle, loving nudge for you, right? You're not just here to keep everybody else afloat. You're actually made to live in the fullest expression of who you are for you, not who you think you should be, for your kids and all the sacrifices for who you are meant to be. Because just because you have children does not mean that your life is over. It doesn't mean that who you are and discovering who you are is over. That's not healthy, right? Your kids are not going to benefit from you being a back burner bitch. They're not going to benefit from you being the doormat mom. They're not going to benefit from you living vicariously through them, right? Like I used to say that a lot about my daughter, like I'm living vicariously through her, right? I'm putting her through dance and cheer and gymnastics and but the reality of it is, granted, while I might not be going back and going into ballet lessons or trying to learn gymnastics, although I did try for a moment in time as an adult because I was like, man, I really wish I could have done this as a child. It didn't end well. But I'm doing other things for myself, right? Your kids are not going to benefit from you staying in an unhappy relationship, an unhealthy work environment, right? All of these things. This is your gentle, loving nudge as your older sister. Maybe I'm not older than you, but you know what I mean. Now, one vulnerable story I'm going to share with you, and I know that this Mother's Day podcast is a little bit all over the board, but I've had my fair share of experiences that I feel like, the podcast is really my life's work and sharing my story and my lessons. And it's not just health and fitness, right? And for those of you, just to kind of circle back to the staying in unhappy relationships, I stayed in a marriage for 10 years and I should have exited that marriage a year into it. Okay. Now, do you think my kids didn't pick that up? Because they did. They did. Because I was high strung a lot. I was stressed out a lot. I had a lot of stomach issues. I was avoiding things. I was snippy a lot. I was grumpy a lot. They could most certainly catch the vibe in the interaction between myself and my then husband, right? Now, when I had to sit down, now I have never shared this story before, and I'm going to, again, try to remain my composure, but when I sat my daughter down to tell her that I was filing for divorce, that's a very difficult conversation to have, right? I had to have that with all three of my children. And all three of those conversations I will never forget because they are definitely burned into my memory. Not a fun time. But I took my daughter to ice cream. Okay. Now, mind you, up until this point, I can't believe I'm sharing this story, but up until this point, my ex-husband and I had separated and got back together, I want to say 4 or 5 times before I finally decided I couldn't take it anymore. And my daughter was 18, I believe. Yeah. So it's been a little over 10 years. And I took her to ice cream and we sat down and I just told her, I started crying and I said, I finally come to the decision that I'm going to file for divorce. And my beautiful daughter, as young as she was, very intelligent, and she had seen her fair share of us doing this whole, separating, and he'd go live somewhere and I'd have my own place and then we'd get back together and then we'd separate, right? It was chaotic, to say the least. And she looked at me and she said, I really wish you wouldn't have stayed married just for us. Your kids want you to be happy, okay? Your kids want you to be happy. Now, my youngest was 8 or 9, and he didn't really have that awareness, right? He didn't have the maturity to be able to understand that, right? He just wanted to see his mom and dad together, and that was heartbreaking. It was very difficult. And so if you're in a position in your life where this is something that you're considering, I want you to do the work, okay? I want you to do the work. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your children, and you will be a better person for it when all is said and done, okay? And I'm here for you. Your kids, they don't need you to be perfect, They need you to show them how to live a full and rewarding life. And being in a relationship, a job, in a body, in an environment that creates unhappiness or is not fulfilling for you is not showing them how to live. What are we teaching them, right? So let's lighten up the mood a little bit. We're going to talk about the collective voice here, you guys, the community wisdom. I asked the women in my world over on Instagram what they wish they could tell their younger mama selves. And what they said, it definitely cracked my heart open. Okay. It cracked it wide open. So I want you to just lean in and listen. So Kat S. Hussein over on Instagram says, give yourself a lot of grace and embrace the changes that occur. Misty Strong 92, shout out to Misty. She's a old competitor client of mine. Hug your kids more and show them affection. Absolutely. If I could go back and hug my oldest and youngest more, squeeze the fucking shit out of those kids and love them up, I would, and I can't. It's too late. So if you've got little ones, hug them more. Mary Elizabeth, hi, my friend Mary Elizabeth. She says, screw the to-do list and enjoy being with your kids. Now, I just came off of this is a side note that I just want to interject here. I just came off of a trip with my sister, and we went to North Carolina to visit my granddaughters. They moved out there with their mom, and that was a really tough adjustment for all of us. But I spent 4 days being a 6-year-old with my granddaughter. Well, she's almost 6, and a 3-year-old, and playing dress up with them and imagination with them and doing Moana yoga on YouTube with them. And my heart, those girls get me every time. Oof, there came the tears. It's the grandbabies that get me. Okay. Laura Abbey 79 says, you'll get through this. Alana Hope F says, listen to what people say about exercise. It will change your life with your kids. Damn. Let's highlight that, okay? I often feel like a lot of the reasons why I had my kids in so many activities is because I realized how important movement was for me. I was in and out of the gym a lot when my older two were younger, and just doing like group fitnessy things, nothing crazy. I wasn't into bodybuilding, but I knew how much it helped my mental health. And when you can pass it on to your children, it makes me so proud to like hear my son, I had a conversation with my oldest son yesterday and telling me like, oh yeah, I do 200 push-ups every morning, and I'm going for a run this evening after work. And, my daughter's a, bodybuilder, and my youngest son is also into bodybuilding, right? And like, they don't have to be into bodybuilding, but like showing your kids the importance of taking care of the vessel and investing in the vessel, which is you, your body, your health, your mind, right? Little _M_big_heart says, get off your phone and be more present. Absolutely. I did not get a ton of video or footage of my granddaughters because I just set my phone down, right? Like I was there, I was present, I was with them. And I think oftentimes, we're in the sort of era of the iPad kid, and it's like an easy babysitter, but that youth is passing by so quickly and you can't get that back. Lisa _Ubeda, this is one of my babes right now. She says, Superwoman, you're killing it, right? Like you're killing it. You're doing your best, and that's what counts. All right. AM Breezy _G says, don't lose sight of what's in front of you. Literally in a blink of an eye, they grow up fast. Absolutely. Alyssa J31, that's my baddie Alyssa. She says, put the work away. It's not worth it. Be patient with yourself and the kids. It goes too fast. Now, a common theme I'm seeing here is it goes by fast. It goes by fast. It goes by fast, right? Christy M. Dole, my baddie. She's a boss bitch baddie. She says, it's okay for the house to be dirty. Sleep is so important during the newborn phase. Absolutely. For those of you that are new mamas and you got little babies, itty bitty babies, girl, let the house be dirty, right? Let the house be dirty. Maybe your investment is paying for Molly maids to fucking come clean your house once a month, right? There's no shame in that. None at all. All right. TM_Neri says, take time to fill your cup. You'll be better for everyone else. I felt too guilty taking me time. There's that mom guilt, right? It shows up time and time again. And then the last one, I'm going to butcher this, but it's KOHAKUSUEDA. Kokasuda says, doing it alone doesn't mean you failed. You've got this. That, my friends, is the community wisdom, the collective voice that just had me smiling from ear to ear. So this was a heavy but yet loving, gentle nudge for you, my beautiful mama, just taking my arm, wrapping it around you and just saying, really, what would it look like to choose you this week? Right? Like, I know it's Mother's Day, or maybe you're listening to this after Mother's Day, but what would it look like for you to choose you this week? Maybe the gym is calling you. Maybe it's getting in touch with a therapist and coming to terms with some things you need to change in your life. Maybe your partner, maybe you are in a unhappy situation, right? Perhaps it's journaling. It's journaling the thing that you want that you're too scared to admit, right? Getting that on paper. Sometimes it's scary, you guys. Like, my journal is just such a tool in transformation for me, right? Like, when I think about podcasts I want to record or things that I've gone through in my life or processing childhood traumas or whatever, it's where everything lives. And sometimes you have to take pen to paper and just really actualize what you want because you've been afraid to admit it all these years, right? Maybe it's diving into something with both feet that you've been curious about, right? Take a deep breath. Let's take another deep breath. Just remember, okay? Here's what I want you to remember. This work is not a selfish endeavor, right? This does not make you a selfish person. The mom guilt doesn't live here anymore. All right. It makes you human. It makes you human to be able to pour into yourself. It reminds you that you're alive, especially if you've been an autopilot. And it will also remind you that you are a woman that your daughter will thank you for becoming. Let that sink in. Happy Mother's Day to every version of you. The one you were, the one you are, and most importantly, my beautiful, precious angel, the one that you are becoming. This world needs more women who are tuned into themselves, turned on, and doing shit that's scary. And it's time to wake up. I love you. Enjoy your Mother's Day.